Welcome to Work in Progress, Conversations with Creators. I'm your host, Logan Roy Speitman. On today's program, I have with me ANNEMARIE JACIR, who made the film Palestine 36, about Palestine in the year 1936. It was shortlisted for the Academy Award for Best International Feature. It's an incredible film. We had a great conversation, and I hope that you enjoy.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
ANNEMARIE, thank you so much for joining me. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. It's really good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So your film, Palestine 36, was shortlisted for the Academy Award for Best International Picture, which is great. How do you feel about that?
I'm happy about that. It was wonderful. It was an important year for us, and the film had just come out in September, and then we were shortlisted a few months after that. So it felt like everything was happening at once, finally completing this film, and then the shortlist, and then the theatrical release and the festival release, and all of it sort of all at the same time.
Yeah, and I heard it got I think a 20-minute standing ovation in Toronto.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was our first screening, and I can tell you after such a long time, it was really, really nice to feel the audience that day.
You alluded to kind of the lengthy production process, which we'll get into. But just to begin, I mean, it's a beautiful film. It's about Palestine in 1936. And I think this is, obviously it's a very pivotal year, in Palestine, but it's also not, these events have not been, I think, represented in film very much that I've seen. It's usually, 48, the Nakba, and other, times. So I guess to start, maybe let people know who haven't seen the film kind of what to expect and what that year meant in the history of Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Often, films begin with the Nakba or address the Nakba in some way, which is a pivotal moment. But this is, the more than a decade before that, and it was the moment of this first mass organized uprising against British colonialism, and one of the largest uprisings against colonial rule at the time. And it was a farmer-led revolt, and it immediately, it spread all over, and it really, really sets the stage for everything. And everything that we're witnessing right now it's as if it never ended, really.
Yeah. And one thing I really appreciate about the film, it's not I don't know, typically, you know, you have kind of like one main character that we kind of travel through. It's not that kind of a film. I mean, you have great characters, but you have multiple, and some of the characters, like, is it Yusuf, who's sort of from the rural village, but then he works in, for the wealthy, Palestinian landowner. Is it Yusuf? I'm thinking of the right character?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. Yusuf, yeah.
And he and some of the other characters too really like straddle these very, very different social worlds, and so kind of through them, it's really, in the end, I feel like less about the individuals and more about these larger social forces and social groups. It's like a social history, um, right?
Yeah. I think that's a good way to say it. It's a social, I mean, and it's a story of an uprising, and
Yeah.
for me, that's why I didn't want the one hero, or the typical way to tell this story. It's about a community, and how that community is affected forever at this moment that we could call the origin story of where we are today. But I no hero, many different people that are connected by this world, by the history, and everything that is happening, this bigger, revolt. And but it's very private in a way, and about just regular people, and also not just no heroes, but the characters that we follow are not the well-known people that, sometimes that, historians focus on, and the people that were, the political elite or the people who were changing things. It's really this group of villagers, just everyday people.
Yeah, and then, and there's characters who aren't villagers, who are more, part of the elite. And who's the group? Is it the Muslim League, or the ones that they have, like, the red hats, the sort of fez
The
hats that
tarbouche, yeah, it's
yeah, the
the
Tarbush.
fez in Morocco, or we called it tarbouche, which actually is a leftover from the Ottoman
That's what
times,
I was
and
thinking, yeah, because this
yeah.
is not that long after the end of the Ottoman Empire, like a decade or so, I think.
Absolutely. And it represents really that it's like not so long after the Ottomans, and it really represents the political elite, both Christian and Muslim, and, just the elite, and the Ottomans, when they controlled Palestine and many other places, one of the things they did is put local people in power. To like there were, sort of local leadership or municipality or whatever, mayors of cities and towns that under the Ottoman rule that were Palestinians. But that tarbouche really came to symbolize sort of that, r- political elite, I would say. So yeah, and during the revolt, because the revolt was a peasant-led revolt, um, there was actually, you hear little sayings about, get rid of the tarbouche and wear the keffiyeh, and then the
Yeah.
British outlawed the keffiyeh, and there's references to that throughout the film.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, I think, to see, because as much as you're talking about, the community of Palestinians, it's really, there's divisions within that community. And of course, the British, if there's one thing they were great at all around the world, from India to
Yeah.
Palestine to everywhere, is divide and rule, right? You kind of stoke those internal divisions, and put people from one group in power, and right. And I think you kind of see that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They were the experts at divide and conquer. And they drew also, I mean, arbitrary borders, between the British and the French. The British were everywhere. The empire was the largest empire, but the British and the French, specifically in the Arab world, just drew, arbitrary borders and lines all over the place, and divided it up between themselves. And yeah, it's been always, the project has always been, I think, about separation of people.
Yeah. And then you have another character, what's her name? Is it Kulud?
Yeah.
Who is she, a journalist, or her husband's a journalist?
She's a journalist,
Yeah,
and yeah, she's a journalist, and the husband is not a journalist. He's a businessman, but he has influence, and he has aspirations to be mayor. Um, and then we find out later that he's also, in her paper, helping to get some articles published through her paper.
right.
And it's a paper which she writes under a male name, a fake name, in for different reasons, because sort of to be taken seriously, because she's a political writer, and it's a moment where I think male names are taken more seriously. That might not have changed so much since then. And also because she's writing under colonial rule, colonial governments, and so a lot of people, as protection, were writing under other names.
Yeah, but she's such a compelling character, a strong character. I'm wondering, is she based on a real person?
She's based on a mix of a couple of people. So I started developing this project many, many years ago with a writer, Salma Dabbar, Palestinian writer, and we were throwing out a lot of ideas. And I had this idea for Khulud, who would be a journalist. Um, and Selma was doing a lot of work on a sort of socialite Jerusalem Palestinian woman, and I think it's actually the child of Selma's socialite and my political journalist. There was a lot of women who were involved in, founding newspapers and journalism, and she's sort of, but this connection to the British and having the Palestinian elite what were mixing with the British. They were having parties together. There was like a normal life as well, and they mixed very very closely together. So she's kind of, I would say, a mix of two actual characters,
Yeah.
two
How
actual
much
people. Yeah.
Right. How much research did you have to do for this film? I mean, I'm sure you knew a lot of the history already, but I know you did do additional research.
I knew a lot, but I learned so much. I
Yeah.
mean, it was a huge exploration and to go down the different paths because there's so many different aspects to the story. I mean, for example, one of the characters, Khaled, who works at the port, that was a whole other thing. There's a lot about the ports. It was really interesting because young men were leaving their villages and they were working at the ports, and then there was unionizing happening, and there were the Arab workers and the Jewish workers, and the Jewish workers were becoming unionized, and there were different ports then, and the British playing sort of between everybody. So that was a whole thing. There's a lot about specifically about the ports. And then there was other things about how the army, there's a lot written about the army, the violence of the British army, especially in the countryside. So that was like another thing. And I think I was just following many paths and learning more and more. And then eventually, pulling all of those things together to create this ensemble story.
Yeah. Um, and how long did it take from, I guess, kind of like your initial ideas and thinking about it into, till it was finished? I mean, the whole process.
Wow. Yeah, the whole process is about 10 years, honestly, from
Wow.
the very,
Yeah.
very beginning, like the first ideas and the first images and the things, and then, sort of photographs from my family and also hearing about the revolt of 36 from family and then becoming curious, hearing about the village in the film where the incident at the end of the film with the bus takes
Yeah.
place, was a friend's mother. She told me about it for the first time, and I was very surprised, honestly, maybe naively so. I was surprised by the violence of it, because it was 10 years before the Nakba. And
Right.
I hadn't really, read about anything or heard about anything like that before I started the research. A lot of people do know about it, especially historians and academics. But I think for in the general public, um, we sort of we sort of talk about the violence beginning in 48, but it was so much earlier than that.
Sure, and even I guess before this, there were like some Zionist terrorist groups that were operating in Palestine and things, right?
Before this, there was also uprisings as
Yeah,
well, because before the uprising, the British have been in Palestine for almost 20 years by 1936, but the Ottomans were there. There were uprisings against, the Ottoman rule as well.
yeah.
In small, there was a lot happening. So, yeah, I would say there's so much, so many more films.
One thing, I think you don't depict a lot of overt violence in the film, which I mean, I kind of appreciate. Like, I don't love watching a lot of violence myself,
Yeah.
but and I think you're really focusing more on kind of these social forces and the human stories, and of course, there's violence that's sort of surrounding it, and it's a context, but it feels like maybe it was, a deliberate choice to not get too kinda graphic with it.
Yeah, I don't like either. I don't like violence. I don't like graphic. I don't need to see it. I've seen enough violence, and I think
Yeah,
it's very, in cinema you can really feel violence. You can feel humiliation. You can understand a lot without having to see it. I prefer not to see it. So yeah, the film is tough, but it doesn't you don't it's not really graphic, and I have to say I did try. I mean, we shot some scenes that were more directly violent. There was a waterboarding scene, a torture scene, the brother who gets, picked up and taken to prison. Um, and it was too much in the editing room when I watched it, and we were like, it's too much, and it doesn't really for me, it doesn't really give anything more. It's sort of, we kind of know that. And I
right.
think I found it really powerful, like in that case specifically, when he leaves the prison at the end and he's walking, you almost don't know who he is. He's changed. He looks physically so different. We haven't seen him for so much of the film because after he gets taken
Yeah,
away, I'm just amazed by the I think he carries all that pain and torture on his face that you feel it without having to see it.
Yeah, I think so too, and I do personally. I think it was a good choice, you know. And
Thank you.
but let's talk a little bit more about the production. I know, you know, and of course, um, it was interrupted by the Gaza War, the whatever, we want to call it, but that
Yeah.
happened. Yeah, kind of maybe talk a little bit about that and how you were able to then return to continue filming.
Yeah, it was after, we had been preparing for this, and we were very aware. We started preparation very early because we were very aware that we were embarking on the biggest, most difficult film that we've done in Palestine. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of, just extras and machinery and,
It's
weapons
quite
and all
epic.
that.
If, people that haven't seen it, it's a pretty epic film.
Yeah. And it was like, this was a bit crazy to begin with that we were even thinking that we could do that, but I refused to think that we couldn't. And then, when everything started with Gaza, and then very quickly after, it was very obvious that then the genocide was beginning. Um, I think it took us some weeks to figure out what are we going to do. We were more concerned with safety, with getting everybody home, making sure everybody was okay, and really glued to the news and trying to figure out what is next. And I also thought, well, it's not the first time, it's not the last time, we have lived all our lives under occupation and violence, and so it wasn't entirely unfamiliar. And I've made films, and we were saying that to each other, we've made films under, really bad conditions. And, when I made my first short film in Palestine, it was like the height of the second intifada, and it
Mm.
was a very violent time. There were F-16s dropping bombs in Ramallah where I was living regularly. So I sort of we were like, and we still made a film, right? We still, we find our ways to do things, and all Palestinians do. And then it just was going on and on and on. And the producer tells me, because I asked him recently, like, at what point did we move? Because I was so stubborn about not leaving Palestine and refusing to shoot anywhere else. So I actually, really, the other day, I just said, it's been a long time now. Do you remember the decision to move? And he said, well, we made the decision together. And I said, but I was so, anti that you were so stubborn. He said, basically, I just had to cut the umbilical cord, and we had to move because there was no way. Of course, there was no insurance anymore. Agents weren't letting their clients come to Palestine. The genocide was like raging on and on. There was no way, there was no safety even for anybody. Even if we tried to shoot, it would just actually have been dangerous. Um, like for the village scene. So we went to Jordan, and we went up to near the Syrian border. There was a village, and we restored that village, and we started, filming again, and started from zero, and it was totally devastating. And financially, the film was bankrupt, and we
Mm.
didn't even know if our partners were going to stick with us, and even if the team was going to stick with us. All the cast stayed on board. Everybody was like, just tell us what we can do, and we're in. Don't worry. And Jeremy Irons being the first person to send me a message to tell me that, like, don't we are the least of your worries. Just, figure things out. Tell me where to be and when, basically. So it was a very difficult time, and then it just continued because things spread regionally, things got worse, the
Right.
production stopped and started 4 times. We eventually did come back to Palestine because I just really could not imagine, shooting anywhere else. And then it was like, we were having, rehearsals or, preparations, and suddenly it's like drones and F-16s, and there are missiles coming in, and we're running, we have to be, going into shelters, coming back out, or even when we were shooting, we had to, I think for insurance, like our locations, we had to be able to get the entire cast and crew into a safe area, within 5 minutes if something were to
Mm.
happen. So we were shooting exteriors, of course, and so it was like it was a logistical nightmare. Every day
Oh
was
my
a
god,
logistical
yeah.
nightmare. Yeah.
I'm amazed that you were able to do it with all that.
Yeah, I me too. Like, yeah.
And like, as you were saying, I mean, you know, you grew up there, you're kind of, I mean, I hate to say you're used to it, that's what you said, but but there must have been other people that were part of the cast and crew that were not
Yeah.
used to it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of I'll tell you, the core team was used to it. Like the Palestinian team was used to it. And if they hadn't done it in art, they'd done it in life. Like they'd done it by going to school, by getting through checkpoints. By it's just everything about figuring out how to live normally in a very abnormal situation. We did have crew that was part of the original team in Palestine that was not Palestinian that came from Europe, and they freaked out. They were like, we evacuated the foreign crew. Most of them came back. Some of them didn't come back. They were like, it's just like this is not normal. I mean, independent film is difficult. Independent, making films is hard. But when you have like a war and this is not, it was too much. But a lot stayed on. Helen Louvard, the DOP, French. She'd been with me in Jordan about 10 years ago shooting. And she wasn't able to do the entire film because we just had to stop and start and stop and start. And her schedule was quite busy, but she was totally committed, and she came back a number of times, and then she had to go shoot something else, and then she would come back, so that there were other people shooting, and she was sort of overseeing everything. But yeah, it wasn't for everybody, and there was one cast member I did lose. Actually, I think about it early before October 7th, about a week before, which is kind of weird. His wife got very nervous and
Mm.
said she wasn't comfortable with him coming to Palestine, and then the shit really hit the fan. So maybe she had a premonition. I don't know. It's a bit
So
weird.
that was, you had to recast that part?
Him I recast. That was, yeah, but that was like, even, that was way before October 7th.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But all the rest of the Jeremy Irons and everyone, they were okay. They were troopers, I guess.
They were troopers. They were troopers. And I think in some ways, like Liam Cunningham, Dhafar Labidin, who plays Emir, they felt even stronger how that it was important, to do
Yeah.
this. And like Hiam Abbas, I think like Hiam and Yasmin Al Masri, who plays Khulud, both of them were on airplanes coming in when things like, Hiam, the second time when we started to shoot in Jordan, it was the first day of the first Iranian missile attacks. And she was coming in on a plane, and so that got grounded and canceled. And it was like, oh my God, we're going through this. Like, it was like the second time we were ready to go. So there were things like that, but then she came later, and yeah, people were, as you said, troopers. Yes.
But it must be like so just, I don't know, stressful, because it's like the kind of fear of like we might get killed. There's that, and then there's all the other stuff of the insurance and the logistical nightmare, like you said, and people's planes getting grounded, and because of the production,
Yeah,
takes too long, then you're going over budget. I mean, all that. Like, I could just imagine, like, how
a
do you
lot of
how do you
stress.
even how do you
Yeah,
survive? How do you stay cool and continue on?
yeah. Well, yeah, it's a lot of stress, and I have to say, the biggest hero of this was Osama Bawardi, who's the producer of the film. He's also my husband. I was dealing with, like, how are we going to direct? How are we going to make this? How are we going to keep everybody together? But actually, the pressure on him, because he is the sole producer of the film. We have a lot of co-producers, amazing
Mhm.
partners in other countries, but like the responsibility of the film was full on his head, and it's like financially we're falling apart. Nothing can be planned. There's no, how are we going to deliver? How are we going to, and we've have, it was a very complicated financial structure between, our French co-producers and British co-producers, and then all the private financiers, and then, the insurance and equipment and all this. I mean, he can do a master class now on how to, how to survive a film like this, and it's definitely, he's definitely somebody worth talking to, but the pressure on him was really intense, and it was, it was a lot. It was a lot to do.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this film, it's gonna go down in history. It's like this and like Apocalypse Now and these kind of
Yeah.
where like the kind of making of the film is sort of its own
Yeah.
adventure, I guess.
It's funny you say about Apocalypse Now because I went back after we wrapped. I actually went back and watched Hearts of Darkness, which is the
Yeah.
making of, of Apocalypse Now, and we watched it with like a group of us from the crew, and we were like, oh my god, it's like we really really connected. I have to say.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah. But in the
Yeah.
end, it all came together. You made the film, and it's been getting a great reception everywhere, and so, that must feel like a triumph, I'd imagine.
It does. It is a triumph, and it's a bittersweet one because, the film exists and it's there, and after all of that, it's there, and we're very proud of it. And when I look, I think about the film, I think about all the people who put so much into this, and all the pain it was made with, and all the love it was made with. Um, but it's bittersweet because, things changed, and I don't think we imagined we would be in a darker place than this. I
Yeah.
mean, nobody and then not just in Palestine, definitely in Palestine, but I think in the whole world, it's a very, very dark moment. And so, you know, to have, to show the film and to feel the audience and talk to the audience and feel the support, but also to know that politically we're in a very bad place in the world. I think it's a tricky thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting, doing a historical film about, um, a difficult, tragic, violent time, but then thinking it wasn't as bad, I guess, as, things are now.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's a strange
100%.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, the violence that, the film talks about, this violent moment, and it is nothing compared to now.
And, I mean, well, one thing also I liked about I feel like you show not just, physical violence, but also, how Palestinians were dispossessed of land, and sort of tricked sometimes, it seems, by the British administrators, and you kinda show that, which I think I haven't seen that
Mm.
depicted very much either, the way that you do it. I think that's an important story that sometimes gets overlooked.
Yeah, that's true, and it is, to talk about how, land, villagers were encouraged to register land. There was also, the fact that the Ottomans started a sort of land registration system, and then it was replaced by the British system, and all of it dispossesses, the people of the land. And not only that, I think, and I also wanted to talk about, the landowners that, and sometimes they were, Arab landowners that were not even Palestinian, but were in other countries, and they, because of this system, they were, the villagers couldn't pay the taxes. There were heavy taxes. They couldn't pay them. So the landowner would say, okay, I'll pay the taxes for this land. You continue to work the land, and I will pay the taxes, but it's our land. And for the villagers, who cares? Like, as long as we get to live here, we get to, as we always have, and get to do, work our land, it's fine, until later, where that starts to, really, allow in the process of them getting, dispossessed, and you don't have registration and you don't belong here, and off you go.
Who are some filmmakers or maybe even particular films that, have inspired you or that you thought about in connection with this film in particular?
Um, I guess there's a few. I mean, I think about sort of big historical, moments. Um, that have, I mean, I could definitely say, The Wind That Shakes the Barley, Ken Loach. I felt I really connected to that when I saw it. Films like, about rebellion and about, how, regular people are affected. Battle of Algiers definitely is
Oh,
is a film like
amazing
that.
film. Yeah, classic.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I wanted to do something also that was an audience film. It was, something that um people connect to, and that, the next generation has it and they can watch it and they can talk about it, and people now can talk about it and discuss it. I love that it's sparking a conversation. In New York, they just had this course, 4-part series of a course centered around um a book that Ghassan Kanafani wrote about the revolt, a Palestinian writer, about the revolt from 36 to 39, and tying it in with the film. And it's just like, it's amazing to me that, this can, this is happening, this kind of discussion, because, as you said, it hasn't, I don't know how it gets skipped in popular culture, this moment. I don't know how we jump over that, but there's a lot of things that have been jumped over in the world.
Yeah, well, and people are gonna know now when they see the film. I'm glad it's getting as much attention as it's gotten so far, and so that's great. Speaking of the Battle of Algiers, it's interesting because I think like when what's it, Pontecorvo, right? That he when
Yeah,
he was shooting, like I mean, he was using actual people that were part of the rebellion, and also shooting in the locations. Really wanted it to be authentic. Obviously, your film is about a time that's 90 years ago, so you're not using people that were
yeah.
there, but it seems like it was important to you to really shoot in specific locations, and not be elsewhere, even when it was dangerous and difficult to do so. It was really important to you, so maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Locations were important, and that's why it was, very difficult when everything we lost so many of them, because they are important, and and I believe in, in the authenticity of space, and that we're not shooting in a studio, we're shooting in the actual places, and our feet are here. It's where I live. It's, we're on this land, and it's important to film here. And also for the crew and the team, that is, we're talking about independent cinema. We're talking about our voice, a film that's from us and by us. So, to be the creative, heart of the film, that it's Palestinians and we're doing it in Palestine, and and you have to fight for that. I think it's important. Right now we're here. We may not be here tomorrow, so let's make it happen here. I do think, it was important. Um, the Jerusalem was like the one place I never let go of. Jerusalem and Jaffa. I was like, I don't want to film anywhere else for those places. There, where I even used the word. I told the team, I don't want to be a refugee film. We're not going to become. Well, we are refugees. We're a refugee people. We've got to like fight that this film is not a refugee film. So yeah,
Yeah,
it was important.
absolutely. I was wondering, are you related to Emily Jasser?
Emily, yes, I am. Do you know her?
The Yeah, well, I don't know her personally, but I know she's a artist and filmmaker. I know I've watched a lot of
Yes.
her short
Yeah.
films.
Yes, we are related. She's my sister.
Oh, I didn't know
Yes.
that. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you both, I don't know, like, were your parents artists, or how did you end up becoming filmmakers and artists?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think we definitely have creativity in the family. My mother is a very creative person, and my mother was my parent. My mother was a teacher, and she was very artistic, and she painted everything everywhere, all our walls. She made our clothes. She was like a very creative person. And she allowed us to be bored. Not that she allowed us to be bored. She just refused to entertain us. She used to refuse to find
Uh,
entertainment for us, like when we had nothing to do. And we grew up in Saudi Arabia, so that was very boring sometimes because there really wasn't anything to do. And she would
Yeah.
just be like, figure it out. You know, you deal with it's your problem. If you're bored, it's your fault. That was
You
sort
know,
of her attitude.
my dad used to say that. He'd say, like, "If you're bored, then you're a boring person."
Yeah.
And I thought it
That's a
was
good,
so
yeah.
mean, but
Yeah.
then, I found things to do, and I don't know, probably maybe it did make me creative, that I didn't.
Yeah. So I used to think my mom was like, I was like, I'm bored. It's like, it's you're bored, it's your problem. Or she would say, we'd be like, I'm bored, and she'd say, well, stand on your head and count your toes. Like, what should I do? Stand on your head and count your toes. This always was her answer. And now I'm saying that to my daughter, and I'm like, and if you're bored, it's your fault. I'm saying all those things. So, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
How old's your
So
daughter?
she's 10.
10?
Yeah.
Um, and, is she interested in filmmaking?
We hope not. We hope not. We became like conservative parents. We're like, you're going to be a
Uh,
doctor or a lawyer,
right.
But she's definitely she's a very creative person, and she's
Yeah.
yeah, it's in her blood.
Do you
Yeah.
think that, like, having being a parent, does that change the way you think about the characters in your films?
You know, um, I think, yeah, being a parent is something that uh definitely makes the job harder.
Mm,
Um, it's to be a parent and to be able to make a film where the film needs everything in you, and being a parent needs everything in you, it's a very hard thing to balance. And I think that families that have single parents, especially, so much respect. But when you have like a couple like we are, and both involved in film, it's very tough. I sometimes I think, there is just I don't know how do we do this, because there's never any downtime. There's never any space. There's never, you need to think. You just need to think about things or do things, but you can't because you have another commitment too. So it's always like it's either this or this, and there's never you in the middle of it or having like that. Um, but I think I don't know if it's affected my filmmaking, because I made a film before I became a mother about a little boy and his mother. And everyone kept telling me, "You don't have kids?" And I said, "No." They said, "It feels like somebody who
mm.
has a child made this film." I didn't have a child at the time. But I think maybe that's more not that parenthood has changed me in the way you know, I look at characters or approach the work, but um, I'm I like children a lot, and I think it's there's that there's so much. Making films is so much about for everybody about being a child, like having the freedom of that a child has, and not allowing yourself to, not making this film, knowing that we might not be able to finish it. It didn't really matter. It was just like, let's just keep doing, let's keep doing. Let's not think. There's something actually childish about that. We
Mm.
did it. We succeeded, but I think you have to be childish, like find that playfulness and the childness and the fact that, okay, anything can happen. Let's willfully be
Mm.
naive, because that naivete is going to help us survive.
Yeah, I guess, like, if we bring our adult rational mind into, and think, "Is this a rational decision?" You're gonna say no to everything, probably. You
Yeah.
have to be a little bit, I guess that's what you're saying, kinda
Yeah.
irrational
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do what you do, just have to jump in, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. We were wildly irrational. I mean, we had a wild sense of freedom, the whole crew, to be able to do this film. We live under military occupation. We pretended we didn't, basically.
Right, yeah. I mean,
It was
even
our
now, I know.
make believe.
Yeah, like, we were supposed to do this interview a couple days ago, and they said that there were some air raids, you had to go into a bomb shelter, so this is
Yeah.
like your everyday life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but so I guess I wanna know kinda what gives you hope? Do you have hope, and do you feel like film and art can have an impact on the world? I think it's easy to be, kind of, I don't know, like, just think that everything is so tragic and awful, and to feel a lot of people feel hopeless, right
Mm,
now, I think.
yeah, I think that's the thing about it. That we have to hope. You just have to. I have to, because I think I go into a really dark place if I didn't have that, and so um I always say I don't think we're gonna change the world. I don't feel like our films are gonna change the world, but what I do know is that it helps us connect to each other and connect to people, the team that makes the film, and then the film goes out there in the world and there's an audience and we find our audience despite everything. And even it's also a war to find your audience, because you're sharing a story, you're telling a story that is sometimes not a point of view that people want to hear. It's very true for Palestinians. So yeah, I believe in that, and I think it's true what they say about hope being a practice. It's not something that's just there. It's something you work on, and I work on it. Um, and
Yeah.
it's why I think my films end the way they do. They're always kind of you know there's an open end to them, but for me that there's a hope always.
Yeah, I find that this film is hopeful, and I know people have had different perspectives on that. Some people think it's not as hopeful, but I feel like it is, without being kinda like, I don't know, Pollyanna-ish or
Yeah,
sentimental or like kinda everything, but there's a sense of, like, that kind of resistance and survival and a idea that things could be better, and I think, again, maybe this goes back to kinda not focusing on individuals, but on the collective. There's that sense of, like, that we're stronger together, maybe. That seems to
yeah,
be if there's a message in the film, maybe it's that.
yeah. Well, I think that, that community is something that I think is one of the reasons that the British were failing to control. I think there was, there's, a lot of places have a community, and it's true that the community is more important than the individual. And so so they came up with the idea of collective punishment, because how do you punish a people? How do you control people when it's about the community? So
Yeah.
so this is the way they found, like, they considered it a weak point, but I think it's our strong point.
Which is depicted in the film, you see that, collective punishment, but like you said, it's also that's the strength of the community.
Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful film, and it's such an honor to be able to speak with you. I really appreciate, you being here, so thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I really enjoyed it.